Building mobility is paramount to building fitness and feeling great. And the reason really is because nobody wants to wake up in the morning or get to the gym in the afternoon and feel stiff, right? Like you can't hit the exact positions, exercises and movements that you want to hit. And you feel like you need to shake things out for 10 minutes or 20 minutes when you wake up in the morning just to get on with your day. Mobility is really important for these reasons. When we talk about mobility, we're really talking about this sort of two-prong approach. There are two things we need to remember when it comes to building mobility. The first is the actual physical extensibility or the flexibility of the tissues involved in the movement. So what that means is, do we have the range? Do we have the flexibility for a muscle to actually get long enough to get into a certain position, to reach a certain endpoint? The second thing is that mobility also implies control, at least how we define it. And so a good example would be when you're squatting. A squat is not just a test of your ability to flex your hips, your knees, and dorsiflex your ankles. It's also a test of your ability to control that range. Because for a lot of people, you could lay on your back and create all that motion, but can you control it in the real world? And so mobility implies both of these things, control of the range of motion. Question becomes, how do we improve mobility? Well, let's attack both of these things separately. When it comes to improving tissue extensibility, the main thing we need to be concerned with is getting our tissues to their length, their end length, and then pushing that end length over time. This could be through static stretching. So it could be something like laying on your back and pulling your leg straight up and stretching your hamstring. But we could also treat it dynamically by doing things like a Romanian deadlift or a single leg deadlift, where we're getting our hamstring to that long length and really pushing. And what happens is as that tissue models itself over time, it'll adapt to the lengths that you're presenting it. And over time, you'll get more extensibility. And it works in both cases with things like passive static stretching and with dynamic movement. And so that brings us to our second point, which is the control. Having really, really good mobility is more than just laying on your back and stretching. Because if we imply control when we say mobility, then that means we need to practice control when we're training. The big thing with mobility for most people is that when you approach new ranges of motion, there are protective mechanisms in your brain that will generate tension and stiffness to prevent you from getting there because that range is new, unfamiliar, uncomfortable. And so this is why more than just static stretching is important when we're training mobility. Because we want to use actual movements to help signal to our brain that yes, this range of motion is okay. It's okay that we get there. And just like the tissue will model itself over time when you stretch a lot, your brain will sort of remodel itself over time when we approach that range of motion with control a lot. And so not only do we improve the actual tissue quality, but we also improve our brain's protective mechanism so that it allows us to get there. And in that case, just like with tissue itself, in order to combat that mechanism and learn to both control, but teach our brain that that range of motion is okay, we need repetition. And so like I said, when it comes to building length in our tissues, we need repetition and volume. That's why it's important to stretch every day. Treat your stretching like training, not just like a side thing that you do. It's important to get repetition in your stretching. It's also important to get repetition in your controlled movements. The more repetition we get, the more we'll signal to our brain that this movement is okay. And so when we're looking to improve our mobility, we really do need to treat it just like we're looking to build muscle or improve our strength. Repetition over time will cause our body to adapt just in the same way it adapts by allowing us to lift heavier weight when we strength train. And a quick little aside too, the nice thing with learning to control a range of motion is not only do you get the benefit of feeling safe in that long range of motion, but you also get the benefit of building strength. And that translates really nicely to the real world, because not only can we get to those ranges, but we can control them and we have strength in them. And so if we're looking at real world crossover, functional training, one of the best things we can do is improve our mobility and build strength in that range, so that when we're out in the real world doing things that require odd positions, we're not really surprised. Our body knows how to control all those ranges of motion. And that there is how you gain mobility. Repetition over time will improve both the tissue, but also your neurology, so that you can get to those ranges and control them.